Well, hey, today with us we have Joseph Carter, the man, the mink, the legend.
I like what you did there.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been described as that yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, good. That's a first. Well, hey, thanks for being on. I have been watching your stuff for a very long time. I don't know how long, but I said earlier that whenever you started your channel, I was the first subscriber. I don't think that's actually true, but
you were among the first, no doubt. Definitely in the first 100K.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I know that. I first got exposed to you because of Danley. I had an ACL surgery and had a fair amount of painkillers that I was on. Danley and Kale came over, made me dinner, and then turned on these videos. I've got a German short hair pointer that's a prize 100, and so Danley was like, you got to see this guy that hunts with mink. And the entire time, I thought that I was in some kind of painkiller-induced fever dream as I'm watching these mink run around. And so just so our audience knows a little bit about what you do, you've first, congratulations on hitting over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. That's a pretty stellar accomplishment. That's a big deal. And then your primary business, though, is not as a YouTuber, but you run an extermination company that uses the wonderful predatory animal, the mink, which very few people know other than probably for fur coats. And you run an extermination company where you actually outperform and outpace traditional extermination companies, doing it in a very natural way, using the predators to hunt their prey and to rid the farms of rodents and pests and to help farmers out in your area. It's a pretty amazing thing that you're doing.
I am curious. How do you describe what you do with mink to newcomers to the channel or family members, friends that you meet that aren't really sure? How do you describe it? Because I've got a way, and I'm curious. I'm curious how you describe it.
So, the way I described it for years was I hunt and fish with a trained mink, because it was primarily I don't know how you want to say it. It was a recreational event. We would go out and gather whatever we could catch with the mink, whether it be a fish or a frog or a mammal like a muskrat or a rabbit or a squirrel. But then it grew into pest control little by little. Whether I liked it or not, people would start calling me and saying, "Hey, I've got a rat, in my wall, or I've got rats in my chicken coop or under my shed, or whatever the case may be." And so it kind of grew into a pest control, and that was never really the goal initially. It was just I wanted to learn about mink and what they are like as a predator, and the best way to do that is to see them in action, see what they do in their own natural world. But then, like little by little, it kind of evolved into solving problems with these animals, and then eventually. I had a friend who had a dog, and he kind of joined in. And I'd trained dogs earlier in my life, mostly cattle dogs, but a little bit of hunting. Not traditional hunting breed dogs, but I would teach those dogs to hunt. For example, I hunted with my border collie just because it was the dog I had. He was a cow dog, and I liked hunting, so I taught my cow dog to hunt. But I realized very quickly that was square peg for a round hole. But it kind of worked, so.
As long as the dog's having fun and wants to perform, they'll do just about anything that you ask them to do if you got a good relationship with the animal. So one of the first questions that we've got, and you explained this a little bit in your book, The New Sport of Minkenry, which is available on Amazon and also in the description of this podcast if our listeners and viewers want to check it out. What is the difference? Because when we were talking to people about this interview, they're like, he hunts stuff with mink. And we're like, yeah, it's like if a ferret was meaner. So what is the difference between a ferret and a mink? What makes that distinction? And how did you move, from, I know you've done falconry, you've done work with raptors. How did you go from that to wanting to find out more about a mink? Because it seems like it's just often it's just a fur animal, and we don't really think about it as a wild animal or a predator.
It's a very cute little animal, but when you see its teeth, it's definitely got some teeth behind it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, mink are like all teeth. Their teeth are their hands. Everything goes in their mouth. First off, the difference between ferrets and mink. So the biggest difference comes down to the fact that ferrets have been domesticated for, some estimates are 1,000, others 2,000 years. And this domestication process was very specific to create an animal that was very handleable, very, no offense to the ferreting community, they will kind of not like this, but the fact of the matter is they've been dumbed down a lot from their wild counterpart. So they're slower, they don't have as good of eyesight, hearing, they're just kind of a very soft version of their wild counterpart. And the reason that they wanted that was because, unlike dogs, where like a hunting dog is trained to, come when they call and things like that, these ferreters, they just take a ferret, they plomp it down, it goes down a hole, it comes back out of the hole, they pick it up again. If the ferret has enough spunk or athletic ability, then the reaching down to pick them up part becomes quite difficult. And that animal gets cold, either on its own because it never comes back, they never catch it again, or the guy just says, man, this guy's annoying, I'm not going to breed him. Ooh. And so they've been dumbed down to be a lot slower, kind of clueless, very sleepy compared to their wild counterpart. Mink have not gone through this process at all. So even the what some people call domestic mink, the ranch mink, they have had zero selection for what I just described. Their selection is purely based off of aesthetics. They want nice fur, maybe a certain color, bigger size, but their natural instincts and inclinations have very, very little difference from their wild counterpart. So they're essentially still a wild animal, even if you get one from a fur farm who, by the way, the fur farms, they've only been in there, 80 to 100, generations compared to, the thousands that ferrets have been through.
Right.
So the amount of time they've been in captivity is a fraction of the time. And the strictness of their selection when it comes to temperament and those other things is drastically different, because mink farmers just put on a pair of gloves, wrestle that sucker into the next cage. They don't care how mean it is. They just care that it looks nice. So the biggest difference, the number one difference is, to put it short, one is domesticated and made to be tamed through artificial breeding and selection, and the other is not. That's the biggest difference. But the next biggest difference is if you were to compare the two wild animals. So the wild ancestor to the ferret, or the polecat, in other words, that's what they're called. The wild polecat compared to a mink is quite different themselves. So I have zero firsthand experience with polecats, but I have talked with several people who do have firsthand experience with both species, mink and polecats. And they say that wild polecats are a dumbed down version from the mink. So they are more inclined to, and that's probably why they were domesticated in the first place. They were all members of the weasel family kind of have a screw loose. They're very aggressive, little creatures. Whether you're talking about a little teeny least weasel or a great big wolverine or anything in between, even if playful otter, they're all extremely aggressive and have a great ability to hurt you, even if they're small. They have powerful jaws, powerful bodies, and a desire to get after you for no particular reason. You could think, oh, well, I didn't do anything to hurt him. Why is he attacking me? That's just kind of how they are. That's the whole weasel family, generally speaking, whether it be a badger or a weasel. That's just how they are. So my understanding, now this is hearsay, is that the polecat is a couple steps down from a mink. So they're already more inclined to be a little bit more easy to handle and less aggressive. And then they have 2,000 years of domestication on top of that.
Gotcha.
So, have you ever? Go ahead.
The difference is a species. So that's basically is handleability and ease of working with. The difference is from a species is a polecat, or in other words, the wild ancestor to the ferret, is a terrestrial animal. So they hunt on the ground, go down holes. That's it. Mink are kind of what I like to say, a jack of all trades, a master of one. So I know the original saying is a master of none, but in Mink's case, it's a master of one. Mink can hunt underwater like an otter for fish and crayfish and frogs and things like that. They can hunt on land for, rabbits and squirrels, and they can even go up in trees. They're not super arboreal, but they can climb trees and hunt things up above ground to some extent. So they're kind of a jack of all trades, whereas the ancestor to the ferret, the polecat, they are just a ground animal. They're not really going in the water very much. They're not climbing trees. They're not really able to climb the way a mink can. So yeah.
So
sorry, that was a very detailed answer. I hope.
Oh no, that's great. So I do want to ask a follow-up question. You brought up wolverines, badgers. Are we going to get to see the new sport of Wolverinery?
Sure, if I could find a legal way to do it, but the laws, they want to step on our throats as hard as they can when they have no reason to. So the legal complications with working with any other member of the weasel family are rather stiff in my state and the vast majority of states in this country. I could move out of state and probably get some more leeway, but not by much. And so it's just legally complicated to do anything with wild animals in this country, unless, of course, they're exotic. In most states, they don't really care what you do with a freaking lion or a baboon, but oh my gosh, don't you dare touch the squirrel next door. That's the stupidity of the situation we're in this country. But anyway, so I would actually, if I got one, it would be very complicated, and I would have to go through a whole bunch of legal hoops, and maybe I'll do that someday.
That would be really cool. You could take down bigger prey items with a wolverine.
For sure, but I mean, that's the other complication is legally, what would I hunt with?
Yeah, I don't know.
So deer and elk and all that other stuff, you have to have like very specific methods. They'll tell you down to the caliber of a bullet you can use. I mean, there's no leeway at all. So I don't know what I would hunt with, that I could even, go after. But with that being said, there are some arboreal species like fishers and martins that would be really cool to try. We have an invasive squirrel, the eastern fox squirrel is invading the state of Utah. That would be fun to hunt those, but
yeah,
that would be pretty funny though if you started hunting with Wolverine and they had to write a law. That's how you end up with these laws, like you can't wear a suit of armor in the House of Commons in England or something like that.
Right.
You can't hunt with Wolverines, and you're in Utah, right?
Yeah. I know you say that in jest, but It's been my fear for many years that one day they would write a law specifically because of me, and I would get shut down.
Yeah.